I'm watching the rise. And I wouldn't say I'm shocked cause I'm hardly surprised. This one's for the ride. This one's for who knew I'd make it, just needed some time. This one's for my wife. Could have left 1,000 times just about my side.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Randy Kaye, and I'm the host of the Caught Up podcast. Today, we have Erin White, founder and lead instructor at Gear Up Catching. She's helped hundreds of catchers improve their skill and earn scholarships to play college softball. But her impact goes beyond the field. She also mentors coaches and professionals, helping them turn their passion into successful careers. On top of that, she has spent time in the podcast space, educating the community and sharing her love of the game. Erin, it's always great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to catch up.
Randy, it's always a pleasure. You're one of my favorite people, so I'm excited to have you here. Or to be with you. I always say have you here because I was on my own podcast. But
right.
Yeah, it's fun. It's always great to talk to you too.
How are things?
Things are good. Busy. You know what? In the coaching space, it's like volume 10 or it's like 100 and 10 is still really fast and quick. And you've always got new moving parts and just trying to trudge along. And yeah, it's been great. Going really well.
That's good. Yeah. I follow you on social media. And I reached out to you the other day because, I just noticed like a little shift in your world. Like I could tell there was something up. There were some different pics and just some different posts and things like that. So I was like, hey, what's going on? And, like I said, it seems like you've been busy. Tell me, let's get into your world right now. Like where are you at? Like, let's talk about Gear Up Catching. Where's Gear Up Catching? Tell me about the growth. Tell me about why you guys started. Let's just jump into it.
Sounds good. So Gear Up Catching right now we've got, oh my goodness, I think the last I checked, we have 92 catchers that are in our Gear Up Catching space right now. And really exciting stuff. We saw our biggest year of growth in 2024, and we launched our second location in the East Valley. I've been doing this for 15 years now, so I'm becoming the grandma in the catching world, at least in the Phoenix space. And, getting in and out of squats is a little bit harder than it used to be, but my brain is still, 22 right after I got out of college. And so, yeah, I started doing catching lessons actually when I graduated from GCU. So that lovely jersey you've got behind you, that is my home. I was in the very beginning foundational stages of Grand Canyon softball program. I was only the fourth softball class that went through Grand Canyon. So, my Grand Canyon experience is a little bit different than the ones that the kids are doing these days. I had to fundraise for my cleats and had to sell candles and T-shirts and hang my own tarps and drag my own field and chalk our own field. Yeah.
Are you still connected?
I am not connected as much as I was when Ann was the coach.
Right.
When Ann was the coach, I served on an alumni panel for, 10 years after I had graduated. And so every year I'd come back and, me and a group of us that were part of that foundational era of Grand Canyon would come back and speak to their graduates. I'm pretty sure your daughter was on one of the teams that we would serve with every year. And then we were just resources for that year's team and, somebody to connect with and serve. So as soon as I got out of college, though, I knew that I wanted to go into coaching. Coaching is in my blood. I actually did catching lessons under the radar. I don't know if I can say that on a podcast, but these days kids can coach in college. When I was in college, you had to be very discreet about it. So I went right into head coaching and assistant coaching at Centennial, actually, where you're at right now for high school, and have great memories at Centennial. And my first year out, we won the state championship. So, I'm leaving college thinking that this state championship thing is a normal part of life. And because when I was in high school, we never finished before May entered. May was like the ramp up where we're going into state championship season. And we were always contenders for the state championship when I went to Centennial. And so when I graduated and went into coaching and we won the state championship, I was at Centennial. I was like, wow, this is easy. This is just how it works. Turns up when I got my first head coaching job, that's not how it is everywhere. And I got my first head coaching job over at a neighbor school, Ironwood High School, and I had to start from the ground up. And I think that's really where I got the knack for building a program and really being able to get deep down into the foundational skills. I mean, I came from Centennial and college softball where everybody knows how to play at an elite level. And then I go to my first tryout that I'm hosting as a head coach, and I've got girls in jean shorts and girls showing up in Converse. I will never forget the time where I was in a tryout. It was my very first tryout as a head coach. I'm like 23 years old. And 15 minutes into arm warm-ups or 10 minutes into arm warm-ups, this girl's like, do I need a glove? And I was like, oh my gosh, first, yes, you need a glove. Second, how did I miss that there's a kid on the field with no gloves? Right. So it was a really big learning opportunity. And I had to very quickly shift gears from the goal at the end of the season was making it to state to let's just make sure we know how to throw. And let's make sure we, so I really feel like I got a knack for breaking it down and I really transferred that skill into my real passion, which was, training catchers. And so 15 years ago, I gave my first set of lessons and those girls are now teachers and they're in their mid 20s and actually late 20s now. And it's been really fun. So we've continued to grow, and 15 years ago it was maybe 2 or 3 kids showing up to a little park behind my house. And now we've got 2 full operations and we've got some really exciting growth coming this year too. So it's been really fun. It's exciting and lots of moves that we're positioning the business for. And it's been really, I just love it. Giving lessons and just seeing a whole fruition of, one of my assistant coaches that I just hired full-time, Kenzie Salea, that played for you as well. She started with me at 10. And so now she's in her mid-20s and she's a head coach for me at one of our locations. And it's just really cool to see that growth. It's coming with gray hairs, but it's fun to see that growth. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if the whole catching lesson thing was more of an Ann Pearson rule than maybe, an actual rule, right?
It actually wasn't. No.
You couldn't give lessons at all?
No, believe it or not. We used to have to take compliance classes on not using our skill. It was an NCAA rule. And so we could not use our skill set to profit off of because it would jeopardize our amateur status.
That's right.
So that was like a stipulation that we had when I was in college. And it went away right after I got out of college. So I used to actually do lessons for Jody Pruitt. And so Jody Pruitt was my catching coach growing up and trained with her from 12 to 22. And by the time that I was exiting college, she was like, I cannot do these little kids anymore. Can you do them? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so she'd send me a Christmas thank you card every year. And that Christmas thank you card would include a Christmas gift. And that was how we kind of navigated the route. So, yeah.
So 15 years in, now looking back, you do the high school thing. What made you not stay with coaching high school?
Oh man. How long do we have on this podcast?
We have as long as you want.
Just joking. I was a teacher. So my master's is actually in education. And so I thought when I graduated high school, I was going to be a head softball coach and a teacher for 35 years. And that's just how I was going to be.
Jody.
I was going to be like Jody, right? And I come from a family of educators. My husband is a teacher and he'll be a 30-year teacher and a coach. And I thought that was the path that I was destined for. And I loved teaching. I loved teaching high school kids. I love coaching, but I did not love managing a team and a program. My energy is in management. My skill is in, leadership. And that's kind of what God blessed me with was that angle. But, just the bureaucracy of high school sports and how difficult it is to fundraise and to get all the hoops that you have to jump through just to be able to go out and play a game, and the politics that go along with it. You of all people are going to know this. When you're the leader of an organization and you're the head coach, the target is always on you. And I didn't love that. Took a lot of my joy away from the coaching aspect. If it was just showing up and coaching and strategizing the game, I'm all in. And in fact, maybe I would have been great just as an assistant coach, right? But I just did not love the every game leaving and having a parent waiting for me to go. No joke, right, Randy? I had the craziest thing happen to me when it was my 7th year. I was a head coach for 7 years and I exited once I had my daughters. It was a really organic exit. Once I got pregnant with the twins, I realized I'm going to be working a whole day job, coaching for 5 hours after school every day for what is it, like $300 every 2 weeks? It's nothing. It's chump change. And I loved it. If you love it, it's great. But you don't go into coaching or teaching for the money. And I just couldn't justify spending 5 of my months away from my babies because it's field maintenance. And I love that. I love dragging a field with the grass and the little chopper of the sprinkler going around, that smell. Like that was like my Zen place, but it was all the rest of the stuff that came along with it. I had a game at Liberty High School one time. It was one of my last years of coaching. And you know my sister. My sister's always been my assistant coach in everything, and catching and head coaching. And I had a kid who shook me off at the plate. I gave her a bunt and run. And she was one of my bigger hitters, but it was a tight game. I had a runner at third. So I did a fake bunt and run to move that runner from first to second so that we had both runners in scoring position. And this girl takes my sign and she looks back to her dad in the stands.
Oh, gosh.
And the dad goes, no. And I'm like,
oh my God,
is this going to happen? Like, this can't happen. This isn't real life, right? Sure enough, not only does she take the pitch without a fake bunt protection, she watches it go. The catcher hoses the girl at second. My third base runner decides to run and she's slow because this was not the call, right? So now I get both runners out on second and third. So I pull the girl because she blatantly like disrespected the call, right? She got us all out of that situation. And Dad was waiting for me after the game. I was talking to an Arizona Republic reporter after the game. And we ended up winning the game, but the dad came out, says to the reporter, you put in your paper that this lady's an effing B. And I mean, it was wild. Not to mention that happened. The dad proceeded to chase me home in the school van from Liberty High School to Ironwood High School.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know if I get paid enough for this.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's hazard
You know what I mean? And that is not like the norm. It was my worst of my stories, of all the stories, right? But I just think that shifted a lot of things for me, but I always knew I couldn't give up coaching. Like coaching's in my blood. I love coaching. I loved, pouring into the next generation and helping kids kind of find their strength and their power through this skill. And I just knew I wasn't going to give up coaching, and catching was the thing. And I remember coming home to my husband and being like, I don't think I'm going to coach anymore. And my husband was like, Erin, what are we going to do without $300 extra?
Right.
And I was like, Michael, because we're both teachers, right? So money was tight. And I was like, you know what, Michael, I'm going to make $600 in lessons. Watch. And then all of a sudden 600, I was like, well, if I can make 600, maybe I can make 1,000 a month. Then I was like, oh shit, that happened. Sorry. I don't know if I could say shit, but
you can say it.
Oh man. You know what? I wonder if I could make $3,000. And then all of a sudden 3,000 became, what if I can double that and make 6,000? And sure enough, I remember being in my classroom on my prep, because when you're a coach and a teacher, like your coaching brain never turns off. And when you love business, your business brain never turns off either. It's like a sickness. And I remember doing my calculator, and I backwards designed, because as teachers, we're taught like you design from your goal backwards. So if the end is pass the test, well, your backwards design is like, what lessons do you teach to get to pass the test? So I put into my goal 100K. I want to make 100K. If I were to make $100,000 as a teacher, that would like more than double my income or if I made 100,000 as a coach, it would more than double my income as a teacher. Could I do that? And so I looked at it and I entered it into the calculator, divided by 12. And I was like, I got to make $83.33 $8,333.33 every month in order to be able to make 100K. I wonder if I can do that. And that became my goal. And I did it. I did not do it on my own. I had to hire mentors to help me and really to build up my IQ, my business IQ, because I could coach and I could, attract more clients, but I didn't have business savvy. And so once that happened, I was able to do it for that first year. And then I was like, I wonder if I can do it again. And I did it again. And then I did it again. So in year 3, I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be teaching anymore. I think I might be onto something with this coaching thing. So I exited the classroom in 2021, spring of 2021. And I've been out of the classroom for 3 years, and the sky's the limit. It just keeps growing. God bless. I'm very, very blessed. But it's really fun. I just love, that's kind of a nutshell of how Gear Up Catching is growing. And it's really, I think, a testament to coaches like you who continue to recommend, our program, because we see them in catching lessons, but you see them on the field. And I think if we weren't able to produce a good product for you guys as coaches, whether it's you guys or Storm or, Impact or Hustle or, the colleges that we're sending these kids to, I don't think that would, inspire people to keep coming to us. But that's really what we've seen in the past 15 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's nice when you have, because it's a partnership, right? Doing any of this stuff is a partnership. You and I have had this conversation. Anytime I have a problem with a kid that I know sees you, or I'm having an issue, and it could be on the field, it could be off the field, it could be attitude, it could be any of those things. I mean, I always loved that I can call you and say, hey, what do you think about this? Are you seeing any of these signs there? And we can have that real conversation, and we can kind of both attack it together and fix those things. So yeah, no, I think it's a two-way street for sure. You know as well as I do, we get kids sometimes from recommendation from people like you that are out there working with kids one-on-one or in group settings, and we all have to do our part. So no, I love that. I want to go back to the business piece. When you said that you, for 3 straight years, you improved your business. What can you nail one thing down, one piece of your business IQ that you improved, that you go that was one of the things that really helped me move forward?
I think there's 2 answers to that. If you're just talking about the success of the actual business, the game changer was shifting away from being on demand, where parents could just, hey, can I get into a lesson this week? And then here I am twiddling my thumbs at a park waiting for somebody to show, and they had the option to show. So making the shift from I'm an option each week for these families to, if you want to be a part of my world, here's the requirements. I'm a membership-based program, and here's the policies that I've got. And you know what? I'm for some people and I'm not for others. When people want to be able to drop in and they want to be able to come on demand, I mean, if I've got room and I have an established relationship with you, I might be able to make something like that work, but that's definitely not the norm. So I think that was a really big pivot in my business, was actually operating it like a business rather than just, hey, I'm a catching coach. If you want your catcher to be able to block and throw, come see me. Where I think my first probably 7 years of giving lessons, that's how I rolled. And it wasn't until I actually hired my own coach. I hired a coach for nutrition, and because I was, post babies, and I was an athlete. So I never had to worry about what I ate. I could eat whatever I wanted and exercise when I wanted and never gain a pound. And then all of a sudden I have twins, and I'm like, what the heck happened to me? Holy crap. And so I really needed to learn how to fuel my body for not only getting back in shape and losing baby weight, but I needed to learn how to fuel my body so that I could teach my kids how to fuel their body. That was a really big thing for me. And in that, I got to watch how my coach operated, and I got really curious and excited about it. And just from picking her brain, and then eventually I hired her as my business coach to just kind of dismantle the way that I've operated my lessons and level it up. And so I think the first part is operating my business as a business. I'm not somebody who can just, hey, can I schedule with you? You've got to be able to fit into our world. And that's how I kind of vet my own clients, right? I want to know what families are coming in, because our retention rate is 97% for the course of 8 to 12 years. We did that statistic with my most recent business coach. She's like, do you know what your retention rate? I'm like, I think it's pretty high. And she's like, no, seriously, let's do that as an evaluation. So we did a deep dive into our data, because data is huge in business. You can't make decisions on a whim. You've got to have decisions coming from the data that you're seeing. If you have a drop in your clientele, there's something that caused that drop in clientele. What is it? Go do the deep dive. And so when we did that, we actually found on the flip side, I have people who are staying for a long time. A lot of the kids who stay with Rogue, they're with me from 10 years old until they go to college. And you even have kids that are graduates of yours that I still see when they're home. And I started with them when they were 10 years old. Hannah Lindsay is one of them. She's 22 years old, and she started with me. She actually started a little bit later because of her knee injuries, but we see them all the way through their journey if they stay. And then we found in that deep dive that the only reason that we were losing people was A, they decided not to catch anymore, or B, affordability. So, maybe parent lost a job, but I always worked with those families. We know that there's been times where you've called me like, Erin, can you do me a solid? Like, I've got a kid who needs you. I've got a kid who needs your training. They can't afford it. And I'm like, whatever you need, bud. Like, we'll make it work. So I think that's a huge thing in the business realm. And then in order for me to level up in business, this has been true every single time I've needed to get to the next level. So like my level used to be, I want to get to 100K. Well, my next goal is 300K. So there's a skill set in the 200 to 300K that I don't have, right? So I need to invest in my own knowledge to be able to do those breakthroughs. And every single time I have found this to be true, it is that knowledge that unlocks the door faster. You can DIY it all you want. You can Google the crap out of how to build a business, but you also can hire somebody who's already done it. And that hiring typically cuts the time that it takes you to actually make those breakthroughs. And I found that to be true every time. I've also found it to be true for my clients. But it's a scary thing. It's really scary investing in yourself. So I always call it the barf factor. You know, when you want to invest in yourself, it makes you want to barf a little bit when you see what it's going to entail. So yeah, not being scared is a huge, huge thing for me. So
how so? Like
doing it scared, I think would probably be a better way to say it. So every time that, you know, you're thinking about like, I want to be better at this area, it's going to require an investment in one of two things or both, in your time or your money, right? So investing in your time, it's going to take you to learn that new skill. It's just like building an athlete. You're going to have to invest the time, and you typically are going to have to invest the money. If they want to get better at hitting is huge. Hitting is there's so much minutia that goes through to hitting. You have to take the time and the money investment wise to be able to go out and get that new skill set. And so I always say, when you do have that barf factor of, you know, I've got this hitting coach, but this hitting coach is a little expensive, or I'm thinking about coming to catching lessons, like, okay, can we fit that into the budget? Or, you know, even something as big as like business coaching. When I look at it, I've got to do the pros and cons. Yes, the pros usually outweigh the cons, and they make me want to barf investing in that. But if you do it scared, you'll actually find, I found 100% of the time, you'll find that you're so capable of so much more. And it was like, gosh, if I knew that when I was in the scared seat, if I knew that that was where I was going and all I had to do was just go through that scary phase, now I'm like, buckle me up. Like, oh, it's scary, done. That means it's probably, I'm on the right track. So, yeah.
That's cool. What when you talk about catching, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit.
No,
but
jump around all you want.
Yeah, I really wanted to ask you, like, what would you consider like your style of catching? Like, if you see a catcher out there and you only saw like silhouette, like you didn't see their faces or couldn't tell, you know.
That's an Erin catcher.
Right. How do you, like, what would be that catcher in your eyes?
So I always want my catchers to be fit. So I think that's the first thing is like, no, you're going to get lots of different body types and lots of different heights in catchers, right? You've got tiny little itty bitties, and you've got, you know, girls who are blessed with size, because when you're going through recruiting, typically the blessed with size check mark is a good one for colleges. And so no matter your size, we build our catchers to be athletically sound. So we're going to make sure that all of our training includes their speed, their agility, their body strength, their foundational components, learning how to connect, you know, their lower body with their core to their upper body, and understanding, you know, how all of those elements work. That's the biggest priority. And so that's what we work on behind the scenes. But when you're out and you see these catchers, I get this all the time, like, oh, people were like, she must go to Erin, or that's a gear up catcher. Now it's not as much she must go to Erin, because we've grown so much, and it's really a network of catchers now that we've built. And it's not just always like, oh, she must go to Erin. It's more like she's a gear up catcher. I think the biggest thing is how they command and how fit they are. Like, we want our kids to have a presence. We teach our catchers how to find their voice, because believe it or not, girls are not very good at finding their voice. A lot of us want to stay in the background and stay shy and timid. And I don't know if that's like a socialization thing. I think that girls, especially going into like junior high, if they can blend in and be a wallflower, that's probably 90% of the kids. And so to pull a kid out of that and go, no, that's what everybody else does, we're going to be different. That's a really big thing for us. And so I think presence and commanding is the biggest thing that people usually call us and go, oh, that's a kid who fundamentally they can do what they need to do. They're hustling everywhere. They're physically sound. If a coach comes to me, they're like, I know if they go to you. James Carroll just said this to me. He's like, I never even bother with our catchers because I'm like, Erin's got you, you know? But the other thing that I typically get back is the way that they command their presence and own their space. Because you and I both know, like, the cleats get hung up pretty soon. In the grand scheme of life, you have this tiny chapter of softball. And afterwards, so many athletes struggle with their identity afterwards. Like, what's next? And so we say we're catching coaches, and yes, we are for the 10 years that they're with us. But what we're actually doing and what my deeper mission is to help them as women be able to enter whatever's next after sports and be like, I know how to command this, you know, whether it's the workforce or it's, you know, being in a relationship or it's, you know, being the mom of your kids and, you know, being like a huge part of your household. You have the abilities to do really hard shit because you had a position that was really freaking hard. And so that's really the biggest thing. I don't think it's one, you know, throwing mechanic or, you know, a type of block. I think it's really just the presence, and we want our catchers to be smart catchers. So we teach them the situational IQ through our online curriculum. We want our kids to leave and maybe they don't start their first year. And man, is it pissing off some of my college catchers right now? Oh my goodness. One of yours just called me yesterday and I had a conversation with her for an hour and a half. And she was like, I'm just not playing very much. And I'm like, yeah, you're a freshman.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to earn it. That's
hard.
She's like, do you think I'm being a little over dramatic? And I'm like, yeah, think so. I love you, boo, but I think so.
Dig in. Yeah, dig in and figure it out.
But I want to send them to college, you know, and outside of sports, fully prepared to manage their minds, know how powerful they are in their own space, and not be afraid to use that unique power they've been given. So that's hopefully what people see on the field when you see one of our catchers.
Yeah. Are there any non-negotiables, like things you just won't budge on when it comes to a catcher? Probably falls under that.
Yeah. You know, I think non-negotiables for me is if you're not coachable. Like and that goes for parents too. If I have a parent who is a pain in my side, I don't have to keep you. And I've had that conversation with not very many. I mean, out of the hundreds of athletes we've coached in 15 years, I have kicked one parent out of my program. And it wasn't even because of the kid, it was because of the parent. I think it's one thing to have your own style and to be like the hill I'm currently battling is the knee down.
What are your thoughts on it?
I hate it.
Why?
I hate it. And I think I have to not hate it. I'm humble enough to know the game is changing, the position is changing, and I have to roll with the times, right? But why I hate it is not because I think that it's not good. I have catchers who are phenomenal as catchers who drop their knee and who literally have their ass on the dirt. And they're great, effective catchers. I'm okay if you're there. What I don't like is when an 11-year-old comes in and they're like, no, I frame knee down. And I'm like, girlfriend, you don't even know your head from your feet right now. So we're going to keep our knees up so that we learn how to build that base strength so that we know how to get up and go field a bunt, back up first base, dive for a ball, go and catch a pop-up. Because what I'm finding is this knee down creates this crazy habit of, I don't have to really get up and move. That's what I see more often than the ones that are, doing it later on in their journey. So my philosophy currently is, okay, cool. I know that that's the trend, is this knee down thing. But I also know that we're seeing a lot more errors in pass balls, in laziness and getting up, in them not being as agile and fit, because their knees already down and they're committed and they're not able to bounce to, it's just not as normal. So I struggle with that because 15 years ago that wasn't a thing, and now it's a thing I can't escape anymore. So I'm trying to find, okay, fine, let's just make sure you know how to use your body first before we start leaning on dropping our knee. And the other thing too that I'm really struggling with as a trend in catching is the stick it frame. What's I'm struggling with is the effects I'm seeing from my athletes. I have so many athletes who we've trained to stay outside and around and calm and quiet. So all of our movements are happening as our pitcher is moving, so that we're not at the last minute grabbing a ball and framing, right? So the thing that I struggle with is that a lot of them go into club or they go into college and they're like, yeah, we don't do that anymore. So instead of this part of their hand taking the brunt of the impact of pitches, especially when they start throwing in the high 60s, low 70s, right? And then they're spinning the shit out of the ball. What's happening is they've shifted their hands to here and elbow out across the plane. And so every time these girls are not in pocket position, and that's a part of this stick it, is you have to have pocket position being correct in every location. A lot of them don't get there fast enough. And so this is the joint that gets hurt. I've had 4 kids in the last 3 years tear this. There's like an LCL or an MCL. It's like the ACL for the knee. I'm not a doctor. It's not my lane, right? But I do know that ever since this became the thing that everybody's like, stick that pitch, girls, stick the pitch. And they change them when they go to frame for them. All of a sudden this joint is, and when you hurt this joint, this is an injury that only heals when you don't play. And you and I both know in Arizona, there's not really a time that they're not playing. So I'm struggling with that too. I've got to make some tweaks on, because what's happening with my college kids now is that they're dismantling their entire framing approach, and they are changing them to up and through the pitch. And so what I've got to start doing is introducing them to proper glove mechanics, instead of like, we're going to still teach you here and being quiet and calm and kind of creating the art of illusion in the frame. But this part here is injuring kids so much. So you asked, this question started with what are the non-negotiables? I love it. Those 2 things are the ones that if parents come into our world, or the catcher comes into our world, and they are not willing to be coachable and moldable. And if they have a question, I'm not saying don't come up and ask me, because my answer will never be because it's how I say it. And if you want to be a part of me, then that's what you have to do. No, I want to know what your concerns are. And then let me give you my explanation and why we do this the way that we do. And then we can come to an agreement on what's going to be best for the athlete. Because, not everybody's going to throw the way that I teach throwing. Not everybody's going to want to frame the way. And man, I get some little kids when they get bold when they're in high school, right? So I'll see them on Instagram and they're, they get a pass ball on Game Changer. And I'm like, I wonder if you kept your knee up, if maybe you would have got that ball. And they're like, or they'll send me on the flip side. They'll be like, hey, Coach Erin, did you see how I blocked that ball and threw the girl out and my knee was down? And I'm like, fine.
Well, it's funny you bring up the thumb thing, because obviously I'm sure you know that I think I know the picture that happened with 2 of your catchers.
Yeah.
And I think also people are, the knee down thing is you're also doing it with, like you said, kids that are throwing hard, but also kids that maybe don't have the control that they're watching these guys do on Major League Baseball. That guy gets his knee down. He knows the ball is going to be somewhere in that, that vicinity 99% of the time. So I think that's the case there. And I love your explanation on not getting the knee down too young, because they do have to learn. It's kind of like learning how to run before you can walk, right? I mean, you gotta develop the big muscles, the strong muscles,
right?
Get those motor skills going, and then from there, I think if you want to get creative and get your knee down and get a little bit lower and get under the ball, but the little push up to try to get that bottom part of the zone and keep that drop ball in the zone, I think is something I know everybody's after right now. So that's interesting to hear you say that. Yeah, I've watched a lot of that go on, and I'm always curious. Like I'm kind of like in the same boat. Whereas I don't know catching, I don't coach it. I can tell when a kid is good. I can tell when a kid is making my pitcher better. I can tell when a catcher is controlling runners. But I'm not going to get into the details. I leave that up to you guys.
Dude, I feel the same way. When I was head coaching, I remember I was working infield defense and I was teaching my kids were doing double plays. Well, when you coach at Centennial, you don't have to teach kids how to do double plays. They know their footwork already. They've known it since they were 12. Well, at Ironwood, I was like, so here's how you do a double play. And I didn't know how to teach double play footwork. I'm like, I know you clip the base here, and then you clear the runner over here, and sometimes you throw off to this, I don't know. And so I had to bring in an assistant coach who had infield experience because I didn't know how to teach it. So I feel you on like, I know when my kids are doing what they need to do, but we also, I think as coaches have to be humble enough to be like, that's not my zone. So I'm going to bring somebody in that can help. I actually do this with Adrian Gomez out in the East Valley. So if I have a kid who we need to dismantle their throwing structure, I can get them so far, but I don't have enough time every week with them to be able to give them what it is that they need. And so I'll actually outsource the throwing aspect. So maybe I have a kid who's been plagued by shoulder stuff, and we just, no matter what tweak we can make or we have made, we just can't seem to have the breakthrough. I'll supplement with him coming in and helping. And the hard part for my West Side kids is that they've got to drive to Mesa, but every single person I've sent out to Adrian that they've come back, they've gotten their exit velocity up. Their mechanics are a little bit different than what I teach, but it works. And so I think we have to also be able to realize that the building of an athlete, it takes relationships like you and I have had. It takes, hey, oh, you need arm strength? Okay, go to Adrian. Hey, oh, you need to get your velocity up on your exit from your feet. I'm going to send you over to Athlon, and Luke at Athlon can help build up your body structure, your body strength, your conditioning. And so it takes a lot. It takes a village. We've got to be able to bring good people into their corner that's going to build the entire athlete.
Yeah. And I think us just recognizing that, I think a lot of us do get it. There's some that don't, but I think we have to get out of our own way and look at the kid, right? And let's try to do what we can to help the athletes.
Yeah.
So I mentioned kind of in the beginning that I've been paying attention to your social, and I noticed something was different. And, the last time that you and I talked, on video especially, I was sitting with you having a conversation about, and it was funny too, because I had been reached out a couple times. I kind of declined, it was kind of busy, and then you reached out, and I decided to go on because, you had asked me, and I thought it was important for me to kind of get out there and tell my story a little bit. But so I appreciate you for having me on, but I have to ask you, what's up with the podcast? Are you no longer doing that?
Yeah.
Can you kind of settle that for me once and for all? What's going on?
This is the number one question I keep getting, especially in the last few weeks. It's been wild. So it's funny that you called this week and you're like, dude, what's up? What's going on? So yes, the last time that you and I were face to face was when you were on my podcast, and that was on the Around the Dirt podcast. And we did this series because we thought that it was really important to bring in the stories of all the major organizations. We have phenomenal softball talent in Arizona, and we've got also some really incredible people who are doing some badass stuff, like you building an organization to what you've built Rogue to be, and coming off of the firecrackers, because I've been around for so long that I remember when you just broke through in the firecracker world and you blew that up. And then when you literally went Rogue and built Rogue, that blew up too. So whatever you touch is gold, it's fire, but you're also such a good guy behind the scenes. And I wanted to be able to bring in organization leaders like you to share your why, to share why you do it and give the backstory, because I think you guys as the org leaders and as the head coaches, you take on a lot of heat. You've got parents in your orgs that are like, what am I paying for if you didn't play? You're managing coaches, you're managing, a ton of teams. What are you at right now with Rogue?
15
teams, right? So it takes a lot for you to be you every day and wake up and go, all right, what are we doing today? Right?
What fires do I got to put out?
What am I putting out?
Not to mention just getting up every day to go to fight to keep what's yours.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's this battle, good versus evil out there right now.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I'm telling you right now, it is a dogfight every day.
Yeah.
And I think I might have said this to you, but it truly is politics, man. It's
total politics.
Disinformation and fake news and fake stories and fear tactics. It's all of it.
Oh yeah, it really is. And I think that's one thing that I really learned in the podcasting space through that. Okay, let's bring in Storm, let's bring in Rising, let's bring in Rogue, let's bring in Hustle. We brought in some tournament directors, and man, did I learn a lot. I learned a lot behind the scenes, because when we click record, everybody would share their story. And I would always navigate the conversations, as a podcaster, like you're listening to me talk right now, but you're also thinking about, okay, what are my questions that how am I guiding this conversation? And so to do that, but also to know the history of these people who are coming into the room and to know kind of the politics that were going on and to like watch as soon as we would turn off the podcast recording, them go into softball mode and like politics mode. I'm like, man, I'm not going to lie, Randy, there's some dirty shit in this softball world. I am very thankful. I'm very, very thankful that I'm in the training space because I think I'm kind of, I'm kind of neutral enough to where I can hear the stuff, but I don't have to side with any of the stuff, So yeah, it was an interesting learning experience. And I actually stopped doing the podcast back in, I think it was November was my last episode. And honestly, here's where it is. Cause I get this question all the time. Like, where's your podcast? I listen to you every week. Why aren't you on? I might be having a podcast again in the future. Cause I don't know if you know this, I'm pretty good at talking, right? It's a gift that I've got, but, and we got great feedback from that, but it got to the point, the project, the Around the Dirt project got to the point where I was not able to give what that project needed and to make all the things happy. I wasn't able to, dive into my business, and I wasn't able to dive into Around the Dirt the way that I needed to dive into Around the Dirt. I wasn't able to do what I needed to do as a mom and as a wife when I would come back home because it was all of the things needed me equally, and I had to make the choice. And really what it ended up coming down to is that my business has grown so much. We had a 40% increase in revenue just last year. It was my highest grossing year, and I was split between two equal projects, and I still had my highest grossing year. And we also had our biggest amount of clients. My business needed me, and I mean, my Kenzie needed me. Kenzie, who's running a location, I did not feel like I could give what that project needed. And in order to do that, I had to make the choice. And my choice was, it's where my passion is. Gear up catching and coaching coaches, I think is one of my new like budding, passions that I've been doing it for a few years, like in the business coaching mentorship realm. I've been doing it for the last couple of years, but I had a group of coaches that just finished my mentorship program, I think a couple weeks ago. They started back with me in July, and the results that we saw there, again, same with catching. It was like, I think I might be onto something here. And I love it. When it sets your soul on fire, that's where you need to continue to go. So that's why I had to exit. And so I've had a lot of parents who've asked me in my own training space. And when I started getting the phone calls from Storm and from you, where they're like, what's going on? I'm like, okay, finally, I'll say it. So yeah.
It was I saw some very different pictures. There was just a different vibe. Like there was a different, you were saying something in those pictures that I was like, there's something different, like something's changing. So back to the series that you guys did, and you said there was dirty shit I know there is, because I'm part of it. Like right, I'm
you hear
right in the
it.
middle
Mm-hmm.
of it. I'm right in the middle of it. So let me ask you this. And what was there one thing that surprised you the most? Was there one, and you don't have to give details, but was there anything that you were just like, man, I didn't know either this person was like that. I didn't know that, there were these feelings, or there was this divide, or I didn't know, was there anything like that?
There's a lot of gatekeeping in softball. I think that was the hardest part for me.
We have a different word for it.
What do you guys? What do you have it?
No, I'm just saying. Yeah. There's guys out there. It's called something else.
Yeah, but, Man, I thought I could get you on that, Randy. I thought you would. I thought you would spill.
You almost did.
Maybe for a separate conversation. Yeah. I think that was probably the most disheartening, and maybe I came into it with some rose-colored glasses on. My vision on the podcast was always, and this is my new friend. She's been begging to get up on her throne. It's my dog. She's been begging to get up on her throne this whole time. So sorry. I always saw that a platform like Around the Dirt that does such a great job for uniting so many teams and players and parents and everybody who really, frequents this sport on a daily basis. Because when you're in the softball world, you're in the thick of it for many, many years. And it was a great resource for everybody to be united. So as an extension of that, the podcast, my vision was, why are all of us, we all work with the same athletes. we all train the same athletes, and a kid might be a rogue kid for 5 years, and next year they might be on Rising, or they might go from Rising over to Storm. They might be with you for hitting and somebody else for hitting later on. But we all serve the athletes. That's what our job is. And I think that the really disheartening part for me was, man, did it become very, very clear very fast that that is not what everybody is out there for. And so parents really need, in my opinion, it is just as important to vet who you're putting into your kids' corners as much as they are deciding if you're qualified to be on their team or if you're good enough to be in their organization. These parents need to really do some background checks, not like go to the state and do a thumbprint,
right.
like
that might not be a bad idea.
That might not be a bad idea either. But I just know I knew some of the crap from just hearing it from my athletes on the training world. But when I got to see a lot of the personalities and the dynamics in the world, it was like, you and I said this the other day on the phone. It's like, we have these visions of like people coming together and being united. But I don't know if that's ever going to be possible. I'm hopeful. It ain't
happening.
I know you said, and maybe that's just me being hopeful and optimistic, but I don't see how it's going to happen with how dirty some people play. It was really disheartening. I saw very quickly that it wasn't about the kids.
Yeah.
More than not, it's not about the kids. And I think that that's what really distinguishes some of you guys who have been very successful and some major players in this world that have been very successful in their businesses or on their teams or in their organizations. There is a very big divide between quality and not quality, but the percentage of people who, I don't know if I'd put that person in your kid's corner. That was part that I was really saddened by.
Well, and I don't mean to be negative, but I'm just going to say it like it is. When I say it's not going to happen, it can't, because you have too many people that will basically, I mean, they're literally telling you one thing and then doing something else. Or and for me, I mean, I've tried really hard over the last months, years, to try to see, try to really decipher what people are telling me versus what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And there's always, and it sucks that you have to walk around with that kind of feeling. I mean, looking to see who's looking at my posts online, and then who calls me and is my friend, but I can also tell that you're full of shit because I know that this and this is happening. So to me, it'll never happen. I really try hard to, and I've done this several times in the last month, where people are at wherever and they're not getting what they were promised, and oh, by the way, can you make a phone call for me? And I've got no problem doing it, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to help kids, and I hope at some point people will come together. But yeah, I hope that people can come together, and I hope that we can all try to find a way to make things work. But it's just going to be hard. I
think the root of that I found in at least my experience is just there's a lot of ego, and I think the ego is a double-edged sword, because you have to have an ego to be a coach. You've got to have that. There's a good ego and there's bad egos, right? So you've got to have some type of the ego to put yourself out there, to create a team, to be the org leader, to, run your team. Even if you're not the org leader, but you're the person who's running your group of 15 families.
Your name's on it.
Your name is on it. And I think that what I found from a lot of this is that there's a lot of, I'ma do me. Right? So even if I am an extension of Randy Kaye, I'm a do me. And when Randy Kaye isn't cutting it, and I think that the grass is greener, I'm gonna go do me. And I think what everybody finds when they go to do that is that the grass is greener wherever you go and water it, but it's just as hard to mow. Right? Like you're gonna run into, and what I also have found is that a lot of people have a lot of sympathy for where they just came from, because they were like, oh shit, that's what he had to go through, or that's what, and there's a couple other things too that I found in that space. Is that one was the ego side. Like there's just a lot of ego. And I think that's going to be a big hindrance to bringing people together in our softball community. There's a ton of really negative ego stuff, right? I almost said shit. So I'm just going to say it. It's a lot of negative ego shit. But the other part is that this was something that I really struggled with. Who do you coach? You coach females, right? You're in the space of girls sports. Who's running a lot of these places? And I'm not going to go all feminist. I'm not at all. I think there are so many men who have paved the way for me that I will always honor my male counterparts, because I think that you got to go with people who are in alignment with you. So I'm not saying like it's anti-man, pro-woman. That's not at all what I'm doing, because I think girls need guys too, just as much. We need great male figures in our lives. But the amount of stuff that I saw when I was interacting with a lot of the relationships that we would have to build and getting people on the podcast and doing a lot of the extensions, it was a lot of like, I'm not doing that because I don't like that guy. I'm not doing that because that guy doesn't like me. There's a lot of like gatekeeping between the guys. And there's a lot of rebuilding that us women are having to do from a lot of the things that these girls are experiencing with these males. And Tree and Becky Lemke and I were talking about this in our podcast that we did, where it was like, man, and Erica Beach and I, we talked about this too. It's like, what's interesting is that all these girls play for these male-led organizations, and not everyone is bad. I think there's a lot that have great qualities, but there's a lot of stuff that we as the females are having to be like, let me explain what they're trying to do. Like, we already went through this. We went through this with these coaches. We all had great male coaches and some bad male coaches. Let me tell you what they're trying to. So we're having to kind of like play this middleman. And what was disheartening to me was that even when I would go in and I'd be in those positions to work with some of those men, there was like zero interest on my contribution. Like it was really like, oh, it still is a very heavily male-dominated world in a female sport. And so I would love to see a little bit more cohesion between the male influences, the female influences, but also more women who have played this sport to step up and go serve the next generation too, because I think you guys have done a great job at like going, no, we're going to pull this along. And a lot of women have been like, F that, I'm not doing it. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they had bad experiences from before, but I think these girls need girls too, because we understand how girls think, right? You guys are great at tapping into our brains too. And sometimes, listen, I played way better for guy coaches than I did for girls. I always butted heads with the girls. Why is that though?
Why is that?
I don't know. I have found.
Do you think female coaches get petty?
Yeah. Yes.
Mean girl stuff?
Yes. 100%.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Head
coaches. And you know what's crazy? I'm going to be totally honest. I shifted a little bit into that when I was a head coach. I don't know if it's a management thing. I think girls operate from emotion and guys operate from logic. And so I think that's where men really, I've played for some incredible male leaders, but I've also played for some incredible female leaders as well. It's just that every female leader that I played for, there was a little bit more drama that we had to deal with. And I would say 9 times out of 10, my athletes are also experiencing that too when they have a female coach. A little bit more mind games. That's
the word I hear a lot, mind game.
Yeah, a little bit more mind games, a little bit more like she looked at me weird. Does that mean something? So I think a little bit of it's the girls too. So
they're playing off each other a little bit, like.
Yes, they all sync up on their cycles. No, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I had some incredible, my 2 strongest female coaches were Ann Pearson for sure. And then Jody Pruitt, right? They were tough to play for. They are very tough coaches. They made me better in the grand scheme of things, but in the moment, I was a hot freaking mess express. It was wild. Ann Pearson and I will tell you till we're both blue in the faces. She and I went toe to toe in college. I mean, we got into an argument so badly after one of our games in, I think it was Sacramento State. We were in Stanislaus. It's etched in my brain. She and I got into it so badly in her hotel room with the coaching staff too. The coaching staff was there too, that I walked out of the room and all of my teammates scattered like cockroaches because one of my teammates had a glass up against the wall listening, and we just butted heads so badly. I fractured my neck at a play at the plate in what was my senior year academically, but it was my junior year. I had a redshirt year for a shoulder injury too. I had injuries all the time in college. So I ended up not being able to play that year. And I was our starting catcher and I couldn't play. And she hated that I couldn't play. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little bitch about it. I pouted. I was feeling sorry for myself. I mean, let's just talk about how I was alive. I broke my neck and I was alive. I wasn't paralyzed.
And you could walk?
Yes. So, but you know what Ann Pearson made me do? She made me dress out for every freaking game. I'm like, Ann, I can't play. And she's like, I don't give a shit. Put on your effing uniform. And I'm like, fine. So she came in one night I think I was calling pitches because I still called the pitches for our catcher. And she came in and she cussed me out over a call that I made. She's like, why the fuck would you play that? Or why the fuck would you call that? And I was like, then you call the pitches. Oh man, she lit my ass up. Woo-wee. And so I go, well, why don't you call the pitches? And she was like, I would, but I need you behind the plate. And I can't have that, can I? You're going to have to bleep me out. And she kicked my chair because I had to bring my own chair because sitting on the cold bleachers wasn't working. And she's like, maybe if your effing chair wasn't in my way. So we called it the FC the rest of the season. And she and I just went to blows that night afterwards. She told me I was feeling sorry for myself. I didn't like to hear it. I told her she was being, crazy. She didn't like to hear it. We worked it out that night. Believe it or not, we worked it out that night. But the next day I decided I was a little brat. The next day she made me her co-pilot in her van. And I'm like, why would she we just got into it. And she's like, lad, you're in the front. And I'm like, so I pouted the whole time. And afterwards she lit my ass up again. She's like, when we're finished, we're finished. This is done. Are you going to start this all over again? Cause we'll go toe to toe again. And I will tell you what, Randy, Ann Pearson was by far the hardest coach I've ever played for, but has been the biggest warrior and champion for me in adulthood since I graduated. And I graduated in 2009. Like, she's been to my wedding. She drove across the valley to see my babies when they were born, came home from the hospital. She and I see each other a couple times a year for lunch, and it's usually like a 5 to 6 hour lunch. My husband always knows I'm not going to be home for a long time. And she's still
you're bringing an Uber?
Yeah, right? No, she doesn't drink, so it's never that. But, so I think that for those that are struggling with female coaches, what I've learned is that there is a method to their madness. And I think if you connect that human side with them and try to understand that there's just a different methodology than what a man will use a lot of time, I think that you can also find a lot of wins playing for a female coach too. And vice versa. I think there's a lot of girls who I just liked playing. Guys were no bullshit. They could tell me to get my head out of my ass and I took it. But for some reason, when a woman told me that, I was like,
yeah, I just wonder if there's boundaries that we all know that we really can't cross.
Like what? What do you think?
Well,
what's an example?
I think I could say get your head out of your ass, or this isn't going to cut it, but I'm never going to talk about, like, a female can probably comment on your body or on, outside stuff that I don't get into. But to me, I think I know what my boundaries are. I know I try to keep it there, but I just wonder if it's sometimes that. Here's my thing. Like, let me ask you this. So if your daughter was married, and because I'm thinking about like the other side, because I've been told at sometimes like, hey, you need to be tougher, you need to be meaner, you need to be this or that, or tough coaching, we got to get tough. And I'm all about it. Like my kids will tell you, like, I was a tough parent. Like, I was very strict. I was very no nonsense. But like, if your daughter had gotten married or had a boyfriend and moved out, or was spending a lot of time, and over a month period, 2 or 3 times they called you crying, and how many times would you tolerate that?
Right. I think you'd probably empower them to, like, fight your battles. I can't come in and fight your battles for you. Let's empower you to do that. Yeah. But are you finding that 2 things? Are you finding that there's a little bit more like abuse in coaching these days? Or do you also think that athletes are a little softer these days too?
I think there's a softness for sure. Here's what I think. I think there are parents that aren't doing exactly what you said. And I'll give you the perfect example right now. So, and I've never said this, but so when my daughter, that jersey up there, GCU, when she was at Grand Canyon, her junior year, she wanted to quit. She's like, I'm done. I can't play for this lady anymore. She's this and she's this, and she's always on me, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, hey, I said, you need to, I told her, I said, right now on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like Ann? How much is she your favorite person? She's like 2 or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, then you go every day and you work your ass off because you do your job, you work hard, you show up, and you make it a point to stay there because she's either trying to toughen you up or she's trying to get rid of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, so either one of those, in my opinion, like I'm glad you're going to be tough, but like you need to go power through it. So I think not enough parents tell their kids that. But on the flip side of that, when is enough enough?
No, I agree. I think that's a really hard decision to make because I've seen it on both sides, right? Where it's like, you don't want the kid to be miserable and you don't want that. Sometimes things change. You can have a coach that takes away that love of the game. That is the reality, right? And then there's also the edge where you have to be mentally tough and you've got to have grit and you've got to be able to face adversity because guess what? That's not going to be your hardest boss that you have. You're probably going to have other people in the world that are tough on you, or maybe that's the hardest person. For me, that was Ann. Ann was the hardest boss I've ever played for. And life as an adult, she prepared me for adulthood, right? But then I also see some of our college kids who they get really tough coaches and it breaks them down. It breaks their spirits down. And so, yeah, I think it's really hard to know when is enough and when is it that we're not going to put up with it anymore. I don't know. It's case by case basis. I had a teammate in college who was going to a hitting coach during college, and Ann found out about it, and Ann was like, absolutely not. And she suspended her. And the teammate was like, nope, I'm not going to play for her. I'm going to do what I want to. Oh, no, I remember what it was. She was coaching the people based on her hitting coach's instructions. So like we'd be out there doing like BP and like doing stations. And she'd be like, actually, you should do this because so-and-so said this. And that's how you get your extension, blah, blah, blah. Well, Ann got wind of it. And as you can imagine how Ann handled it, it wasn't she flew off her rockers and suspended the girl and told her she had to decide whether or not she was going to keep her on the team. You know what was interesting, though, was how the girl's parents handled it. The mom of my teammate was like, let me tell you what's going to happen if you get kicked off this team. I take your truck, you move out of my condo, and I'll send you a bill for what is remaining of your tuition. Because GCU is a really expensive school to go to. And back then, they didn't have full scholarships. So it was like, you better find out how you're going to stay on this team and make it up with Ann. Otherwise, you owe me for your tuition, your truck, and your house. What's your decision? And I was like, whoo! I don't know if that's also happening that much these days. I'm seeing it fewer. Like my older kids in catching, those parents were tough as nails.
Yeah.
My younger clients. You almost have
to tell them to back down, right?
Dude, yes. Like,
let me handle that.
Yeah, totally. Like my kids that are older athletes that have either graduated college or are currently approaching graduation in college, those kids are way tougher mentally. They always have been. And I've seen all of them all the way up from 10 years old or 8 years old all the way up. They were tougher all the way through than some of my kids that I've got now that I'm just starting with. And it's interesting. I don't know if it's a social change, like a paradigm shift. I'm not sure what it is, but it's definitely having an effect on how tenacious these kids are that they are, you know?
You think it has anything to do with COVID?
Oh gosh. For me, that was where it stopped, was COVID. My kids who went through COVID, I really watched my high schoolers who were in high school, or my college kids who were in high school during COVID. Those kids really struggled those last 2 years of softball, of club. A lot of them were on your team. So it must have been you, Randy. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, it was me probably.
No, they struggled a lot. The kids who were already in college when COVID hit, those kids were fine. But COVID, I think, changed so much for them where they got to see that they got to be home. They got to see that they could still get grades. The work ethic dropped a lot after COVID. So I'm hopeful that we're bouncing back. We're rebounding back from that from like the younger ages. But I did notice a really big difference during COVID, really big difference. And their ability to like handle adversity afterwards. I had a lot of kids who were in that final phase, like we just got recruited and college is in 6 months, or haven't got recruited yet, but this summer's the biggest one for us. In that like critical period where they're like, I just don't know if I want to play anymore. It's not fun to me anymore. And I'm like, we just did all this work. What do you mean? It's just really hard. I always think about that quote from Tom Hanks in League of Their Own. Like, it's supposed to be hard. Like, if it wasn't hard, everybody would do it, right? The hard is what makes it great. That's what you have to like instill in their souls now. And I didn't see that I had to do that as often with my older end kids. And those kids coming back and now coaching for me, they've got grit and ferociousness. My little ones, they're like, and not like 8-year-olds. Of course, they're going to be a little bit softer, but man, that like 12 to 15 is such a hard age where they're sensitive.
You got to stay on them though. I think that's got to be part of your mission.
It is,
to make sure
100%.
That they don't fall back into that.
Yeah, 100%.
Talk to me about, this is what probably one of the biggest reason I was so excited to talk to you is I really want to know what you're doing with your coaching. Your coaching.
The Coach Academy.
The Coach Academy.
Yeah, my Coach Academy.
Yeah.
So, my Coach Academy.
Gear Up Coach Academy?
Yeah, the Gear Up Coach Academy. So
playing off of the same name.
Gotcha. Yep. And it might transition in the future to I right now I'm getting my website designed. So that's the pictures that you saw. It's I got my branding shoot that was recently done. So we
want to do that?
Yeah, sure did. Yeah.
Wow.
Sure did.
Okay.
Got professional photos done and everything.
They look good.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Thank you. Yeah. It was really fun. But then my photographer is actually one of my former clients. So she was like, what vibe are we going with? Are we like rocking the Gear Up catching? And I'm like, no, we're going to go business. And when I showed up, she was like, I don't think I've ever seen you in something besides leggings and like a softball shirt. So, I've kind of been in beta for the last 2 to 3 years. I've been able to, my biggest thing that I think is one of my best strengths is writing curriculum. So that's what my master's is in curriculum and development. So I have a trained knack, I guess, for taking somebody through a process. So if it's in catching, we know exactly what markers we're looking for at the end of beginner for them to move into an intermediate, advanced, elite, college. That curriculum's fully written, right? It started off as, finding a place because I want to be able to serve my athletes for their whole journey. Well, when they're done, they are itching for the sport still. So you've got kids who are done with softball and they're just starting to knock into their careers and they're like, I want to be a coach. Well, I didn't have anything for that phase of their journey. So 3 years ago, I started developing, what does it look like if I were to replicate what I've done and I've learned in 15 years of coaching and to teach it to somebody at a basic level, what would that look like? What does working with kids look like? Parents look like, management, payment processors, LLCs, things like that, kind of like low level, like business IQ stuff. Well, then I started getting coaches who were reaching out to me like, hey, I'm a hitting coach, or hey, I'm a catching coach in Virginia. Hey, I'm an outfield coach. Can I just pick your brain? And I was like, well, actually, I have this curriculum. Yes. And it wasn't until there was a coach that was on social media that was literally copying everything I was doing. Like I released a program for catching. They released a program for their position. I called it this. They called it that. And then like seriously to the point of the font where I was like, and I was bitching about it to my friend she became my friend. She was my business coach. And I was like, look at this shit. This girl's copying everything I'm doing. And she's like, offer to business coach her. And I go, but I'm not a business coach. And she's like, neither was I. And you hired me. And that was a game changer for me in my business was that. And so that was my very first client that I had. And sure as shit, she was up and running within 5 or 6 months. And so I took that curriculum at the end and I was like, how do I condense that and make it more digestible for a coach that's not starting off? Because that coach was pretty new to the scene. So she had to build up her clientele. But the majority of the people who were reaching out to me were like, dude, I don't have any more time. And I'm doing private lessons all the time. I am, back to back to back. I'm coaching 15 hours in a weekend and I'm working a full-time job. And I saw so many people doing it wrong. And when I say wrong, I was doing it too, right? But I found another way through my own mentorships that I had invested in. And I found something that worked and continues to grow. And it's like, I think it would be so cool if I had somebody who was where I'm at now that could be like, here's what you need to stop doing, and here's what you need to do right now. And that, if I had that and I didn't have to DIY or hire all these coaches to help me do it, what would that look like? And so I put together a 4-month mentorship program that takes a coach who is a pretty established coach. So somebody who's already seeing clients. It's not necessarily, it can definitely work for somebody who's looking to get into the training business, but it's more so for people who are already overextended. They are income capped. So there's only so many hours in a week, right? You can't coach as many people as you want if you don't have a plan that you can scale later on. So they're income capped and time tapped. Those are the two things. You can't literally earn more money because there's not enough of you to put out there anymore. And there's no more time on your calendar, but there is a way to work smarter, not harder. Those are the people that I'm wanting to work with. So the really cool part is that my last 2 clients that just finished, they were working. You'll understand this because you're a coach, and this is just what hours look like, especially as a head coach of a team. They were giving lessons more than 60 hours a week. Both of these clients were. We were able to condense them down to 8 to 10 hours per week. And their revenue, when they were at 60 to 70, any month, it was anywhere from $2,000 extra a week or a month to maybe on a good month, $6,000. The shifts that we're teaching in the Coach Academy that help restructure their business and position them to scale, because this is a really scalable business where you can bring other people in to continue to expand your impact, right? It's not just about Erin giving catching lessons. It's about Hannah giving catching lessons, Kenzie giving catching lessons, but giving them a structure and a framework to work from that they can be really successful as coaches. And so these last 2 people that I just had complete my academy, they went down from 60 plus hours a week to giving lessons no more than 10 hours a week. And they were within 3 months, while they were still in the program, already earning 10 to 12K months.
Are these catching coaches?
I have outfield coaches, hitting coaches. I had a goalie coach. So they're specialty trainers.
Yeah, okay.
Specialty. So the model that I teach them is very similar to what we do in Gear Up Catching. But making it unique to them, right? So I've had a gymnast. I had a coach one time that teaches back bends for gymnastics.
Really?
And they ended up already on the path to earning 100K. And so again, it's 83-33. That's the magic number within 3 months. It's typically about that 3 months. Once all the new shifts that we make in the beginning of the program, and we kind of dismantle and rebuild using what they're already doing. So it's not like you're having to do like a whole bunch of different things. It's just putting strategy behind everything. And no shit, she was earning like $9,000 a month teaching back bends. Wild. So yeah.
So you said time constraints and income constraints are like what you look for. What if it's not those?
People who are capped out typically are the ones who benefit most. So like, okay, I already am giving lessons so much and I don't have enough time, or maybe they're limited by not having a facility. I've done all of this without having my own facility or property. So you can do this in your backyard. You can do this at a park. You can rent from, I don't recommend renting from cages. It's just so expensive. The overhead's insane. You don't even have to have your own facility to do it, because facilities come with really big overhead. So
would you ever do your own facility after what you've been through?
I wouldn't do at this point in my journey right now, I wouldn't do like a commercial facility. Not yet, just based off of what I know. And again, a lot of it came from what I learned in the Around the Dirt podcast, was like, speaking to all these really big businesses, what I've found about the facility model is that it is massively expensive from overhead, because you're really just exchanging time for hour or dollars for hours, right? You've got to be open all the time to be able to make some type of profit. And if you're the facility owner, you've got to be there all the hours. And the bad part about the training side is that you're open when it's during dinner times, it's during, family times. And I have found that that's not really that necessary. There are nights where you're going to have to, sacrifice a dinner time, but I'm always home. I'm always home with my family for dinner times and bedtimes. And I still do my catching lessons. So that's a big part for me. So to answer your question on the facility, no. But I am right now, prayers, looking into a property. So doing an operation on a property, because just in the rental overhead right now, what I'm doing, I'm like, why am I not applying this to like a house,
Right.
And then we've been able to do all of this only being open 2 days a week. So if I have my own property, we could be open all the days of the week, reach even more clients, even more catchers. And then who knows, see where that leads. So that's kind of what the next phase, continuing to open more locations to reach people in different areas in the state. Who knows, maybe we've got a little bit of feelers out there right now for potential, licensing out and beyond the Arizona space, for other catching coaches who don't necessarily want to start from scratch and DIY again. They want to take from a model that's already been working and known and trusted and kind of go from there. But yeah, we got a lot of fun things in motion that I'm excited to see where it brings. But it's hard. It's the barf factor, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do it because it makes you want to barf. But I always feel like God's called me to big things and he always delivers. So yeah.
Yeah. From high school history teacher to entrepreneur and just doing your thing. I'm super happy for you. Like I said, when I saw you on social media, I could tell there was something different.
Thanks.
I'm glad you took the time to come on. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to put out there to the softball world before you go?
To the softball world. You know what? If you've got it from the catching side, if you've got a catcher who is destined for magic, that is where you want to start with. Wherever their passion is, like now we've got to find the structure and the empowerment to build them up. That's what we want to, that's what we always are doing. So whether they are a brand new catcher wanting to start from the very beginning, or you've got somebody who's ready to be fine-tuned and polished to go to college, I want to encourage you to check us out because we've got 100% of our catchers who have finished our program have gone on to play collegiate softball on scholarship. So we have never not had a catcher go to college on scholarship. So, and right now, I guess this is like my business coaches are always like, why are you not putting this front and center that 100% of your people have gone on? That's a pretty good statistic. And my favorite thing is how much money they've been able to accrue. Right now, we're at $5.7 million in scholarship funds that our kiddos have been able to accomplish. So it's really fun. And I think the next generation, what that looks like for us is as I get older and it hurts me to throw blocks from a bucket and get in and out of squats to show blocks. My mission now is empowering all of my graduates and people who are also passionate about, training athletes is giving them the reins to say, hey, here's the structure, here's how to be a great coach, and let's expand our impact so that we can reach more people and it's not just limited to Erin. So, yeah.
Right. No, and I think you're doing a great job. Like I said, I know you know this. I know a lot of the kids that have gone to you, they played for me or they've been around and I've seen them. And I think you're doing a great job for the future and for them. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great. And it's always so fun to talk to you, Randy. We could talk for hours.
All right. I just want to say thanks for listening. We will continue working to elevate the sport and get caught up with those who are influential in the fast pitch community. And hopefully we can help you navigate your softball journey. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Caught Up with Randy Kaye or at Coach KAZ. You can listen to the audio version of our podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you consume your favorite content. Please follow us on X and on Instagram using the same handles at Coach KAZ. Thanks for listening.
This one's for my wife. Could have left 1,000 times just about my side.